build virtues, the feminine energy strengths are a flat structure where everyone is equal, compared to the masculine energy virtue, which is the hierarchical structure. And there's a good important time for using both. We discussed that last time. Remember, the hierarchy was important for people when there was a crisis at a mine? In the build virtues, feminine energy is all about collaborating with others to try to build together to get the best results. We saw this in the movie Hidden Figures, which was all about NASA. They used masculine energy because they were competing with the USSR and they wanted to get to the moon faster than the Soviets. But they had to collaborate with all the very best minds to make that happen. So they used both. Then we have feminine energy, which is all about the relationship, and masculine energy, which is all about the results. Once again, we need to form those relationships to get the results because you're not going to get them without having the help of others. No man or woman is an island. And then we have long-term and short-term. Feminine energy is all about the long term. We're building. We're taking steps right now that are going to pay off later. Where masculine energy is all about the short term, I want the best results right now. In the early 1990s in the potash business, all the potash that was produced in the former Soviet Union was kept behind the Iron Curtain and used there. We didn't ever see it in our world markets. With perestroika, the producers there were allowed to produce their own potash, and anything they produced above what was needed at home, they could sell in world markets. And that meant that it came out and was competing with us. And my boss at the time was smart enough to say, let's walk away from that business, because they're only bringing out one ship, and once it's sold, it's done. But had he taken a short-term view and said, no, I'm not allowing them, I have to win, if he'd been in his vice, that ship would have just kept going around the world and lowering the price everywhere, and he would have just kept following it around. Pretty soon, the price would have been lowered for every one of our customers everywhere. So that's a point where he used some long-term thinking to his advantage. He didn't become disoriented, and he didn't allow it to lower the price everywhere in the world. Feminine energy is all about empowering, where masculine energy is all about command and control. And once again, there is important times to use empowering when people are ready, but if they're not, that's when you have to use command and control to get them there. That's how they learn. So we need to use both masculine and feminine energy, and we choose the right venue, the right situation, and the right audience for the appropriate energy. If you're operating from the feminine energy virtues of build, you'll like a flat structure. But if it's allowed to be too flat for too long, people can end up being confused. They don't know who reports to who or whose job is what when there's too much and no one steps in to take a leadership role. When there's too much collaboration, people can end up becoming demoralized because they never end up with a result. They just keep going in circles. When they're overly concerned about the relationship, they can become needy. I've seen this in leaders and organizations. They're so concerned about the relationship that they end up going to their direct reports and saying, I hope that I wasn't being too controlling. I hope that you understood that I really didn't mean anything by that. They are so needy that they need to get input all the time. They want someone to always be petting them and saying, oh, it's okay, it's all right. They're too relationship oriented and they fall into their vice. And other people are like, get away from me. If they're too concerned about the long term, sometimes they lose sight of the goal. They become disoriented. If they're too concerned about empowering others, sometimes they become an enabler. People aren't ready to take things on. They've tried to empower them, but they're in negative behavior, and they enable them to carry on in that negative behavior. The masculine energy virtues can become vices if you focus too much on winning. If you really want to be at the top of the hierarchy, Ultimately, that will result in a dictatorship where someone makes all the decisions and people can be hurt along the way. If you're overly concerned about competition, you can become combative. I see this happening all the time in the public media with people who are overly concerned about wanting to look good, that they end up fighting with reporters. If you're overly concerned about the results, that can become oppressive, where you're not thinking about the relationships at all, you're simply thinking about where you need to be today, and you're not really living or enjoying your life or getting the important interaction that you need with others to feel like you can enjoy your life. If you're only concerned about the short term, that can become addictive. You haven't got the ability to postpone gratification. And postponing gratification is what really allows you to hold two thoughts at the same time. And that's what's going to allow you to use gender physics, because you're going to be using two energies at the same time and shifting back and forth between them. And ultimately, if you're overly concerned about command and control, you're going to become overbearing. And once again, you're going to lose the support and you're not going to build what it is that you want to build. When I worked at Potash, we made a lot of acquisitions, and we had to merge those companies into ours. And in doing so, we had to make sure that their culture aligned with ours. And quite often, the cultures were very different. Product lines matched ours, but the people didn't. I experienced this once with a company that we bought from southern United States. These were good old boys, and they didn't like reporting to a Canadian company that they considered to be a bunch of stubble jumpers. And the people in my area did not like reporting to a woman. When I called, I found that I was getting one-word answers to questions, and I never got any information on anything that I didn't ask a direct question about. It made it very difficult to do my job. My first inclination was to use feminine energy and to fly down there and to take those guys for dinner and to try to form a relationship with them and bring them over to my side. But it wasn't working. One of the guys that I worked with dropped by my office one day and he said, "You know, Betty Ann, you're in danger of having a reverse takeover of your department from all those guys in the South." He said, "You need to take them out behind the woodshed and show them who's boss." He was telling me how to get results. He was telling me how to get a win when I wasn't going to have any success building with them. Now, we had a meeting coming up where our CEO was bringing together all the people from both companies, and we were going to make presentations. And I went on stage, and I read them the Riot Act when I was making that presentation. I said, "Here's the way we're going to have to do things in our department to make it work." And I could see the guys who were reporting to me, but not in practice, those guys from the South, kind of looking at each other like rolling their eyes and sort of like, uh-huh. But then I saw their boss turn to my boss and give him a thumbs up and say, "Yeah, we can do that." And then I saw those guys that were reporting to me kind of shrug and go, "Well, okay, I guess we can." So I took a strong stand that day. I used a little command and control. I was giving them too much power prior to that. I was spending too much trying to build a relationship. Probably the organization was too flat. Instead of that, I stepped into my masculine energy. I formed a hierarchy. I told them that we weren't doing things that way anymore. And they listened. And you know, after that, we collaborated and we put out some pretty good work. But it wouldn't have happened had I not used my masculine energy first. Because I tried using my feminine energy and it didn't work. But ultimately, I was able to use both energies to get the results I wanted. So now we're going to analyze you. Add your score on questions 11 to 15 inclusively from the Go-To Energy Evaluation. If your score was higher in Part 1, you operate from feminine energy or the build variable. If your score was higher in part 2, your behavior is masculine energy, and you're more likely to be in the win part, or masculine energy, in this variable. There's nothing wrong with being in either virtue in this variable. The point is that you have to develop your opposite or complement so that you can easily move between them, because we know that both energies shine better when used together. If you're a feminine energy person in the build-win variable, you need to experiment with driving the agenda. That's a way that you can develop your masculine energy. As a feminine energy person, you're probably prone to giving in when it comes to negotiations. Masculine energy people don't have this problem. They know what they want and they just go forward without much concern for others. So what you need to do is think about the end result that you want, and then think about the steps to get there, and verbalize that. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but again, it's baby steps. Try doing it, and the more you do it, the more confident you'll become, and the easier it will be. And ultimately, you'll find that you have the masculine energy to drive the agenda that you might not have had before when you gave in too easily. Those who are more in their masculine energy in the build-win variable like to debate, and they like to win. They'd rather make a point than making a friend. Those who are in their feminine energy take this personally. They consider it a personal attack. So if you're in your masculine energy, you need to realize that's how the others are interpreting your actions. I'd like to see you experiment with giving up your need to be right. Ask people if you've hurt their feelings. Listen to the answers. And if you do, be open and ready to apologize. This will show people that you care. It's time to give in a little bit. You don't always have to win. You have to find your own individual situations to make this work for you, whether you're masculine or feminine energy. But remember, your goal is that feminine energy people want to learn to take a risk and develop their masculine so that they're ready to be seen as a leader. And masculine energy people need to develop their people skills so that they're ready to show that they care and engender the loyalty of employees. Any questions? Next time we're going to come back and follow up on 3 more variables. I look forward to discussing those with you.